Information continues to flow rapidly during this pandemic, and we've tried our best to be open and transparent with you. It's hard to believe how many times I've walked into the office in the morning thinking I was going to work on one thing and then spend the next 8 hours on something completely different. The ongoing pandemic has taken a toll on all of us. These are difficult, frustrating, and unprecedented times. Individuals, families, and businesses are all being affected. Today's news is disappointing to me on so many levels, obviously with our student athletes, our coaches, and our staff, but also our community. And I know and understand what this does to affect our community. So obviously I'm disappointed for that. I am so impressed with the resiliency of our 380 student athletes, coaches, and staff. These are uncharted waters for all of us, and we are sticking together. It's also important to understand the toll that these decisions take on the mental health of everyone. It's not easy to stop and start practices or be informed that you're positive or that you must quarantine for 14 days. It really is difficult for us all to process, and I can't say enough about our student athletes, our coaches, and our staff. Currently, we have 30 individuals within our football program that are either isolated or quarantined. When an individual tests positive, there is contact tracing analysis that takes place to see where the infections are coming from. It's a process that requires constant communication. Our medical staff has been outstanding. We made the decision to postpone the Marshall game simply because it was in the best interest of our student athletes. Based on the information we received and in consultation with our medical staff, we felt like the move was necessary. We've been testing weekly and evaluate our results and make decisions based on the data. As for Marshall, Mike Hamrick and I have had productive conversations and will work to schedule the game later this year. Dates are going to have to work on both ends. I'm really not as focused on exactly when that will be. When we spoke by phone multiple times today, we both indicated that given the significance of the game with the 50-year anniversary of the plane crash game, that we were going to do everything we could to make that game a reality. That could be at the end of the season. It could also be in the middle, depending on how the season plays out. We've had multiple talks with Dr. Silvernail in the Pitt County Health Department. He's been extremely helpful and continues to be a resource for our department. We still are looking at, obviously, football games in the future, and I do feel like we will have fans in the stands, but I feel like it is going to be limited capacity, and really it's not going to be a normal process. It is going to be us working, or me working through our chancellor, then working through Dr. Silvernail, and then state and local health officials to determine what that attendance will look like. I do want our fan base to stay with us, stay with this team, stay with this athletic department. We're going to give the options out for refunds, donating tickets, etc., depending on what the remainder of our season looks like. And it's really also, I want to point out that, we still have to operate from a scholarship funding standpoint. These student athletes are still going to class, and we're having to fund right around $8 million for our student athletes to attend class for scholarships. That's all sports. And so we want, our Pirate faithful to still stay with us in that regard. So that is a brief update. I'll be happy to open it up for questions at this time.
John, would you guys entertain the possibility of playing on the 19th, or do you see the 26th being the season opener no matter what?
Yeah, good question, Stephen. I want to be deliberate with that. And my thought process all along, I would hear from quite a people like when this first pandemic happened and we lost a couple games, I was pretty set at staying at 10, but because I had anticipated some things like this happening, so I wanted some flexibility. I think we need to pause for a couple days to see what's out there. Number one, there are not a lot of teams with availability, and two, the way this works is from a testing protocol standpoint. I want to be mindful of making sure that we can play the Central Florida game. I don't want to pick up a team, play that game, and then potentially have an issue where you couldn't play the following week. And so Coach Houston and I have been in, constant contact regarding scheduling. And I also know that there's the potential for flexibility throughout the year if other teams can't play, due to the pandemic. And so I want to be very mindful and deliberate and not rush out in any regard. I want to make sure we get healthy and are ready to return to the field first.
Jon, is there a number that you have to get football back out?
No, not a number per se, but with 30 in isolation quarantine, I felt like it was important for us as people come back. That's all different. There's different timing on that depending on when the individual either went into isolation or quarantine. And so not everybody's coming back on one day. And so I felt like now we needed to do this based on the safety of our student athletes, and then obviously having them physically ready to play in a football game.
Does this speak to, Jon, I know you and Coach Houston have talked about the difficulties of contact tracing and how complex it is with the 30 guys? I mean, does this kind of speak to the reality of hitting that contact tracing is something that's really hard to manage? Is that a main drive in this decision?
Well, Ronnie, I don't think that it's hard to manage, but it is a difficult process in that you're going back and talking to individuals and trying to remember who they had a significant contact with. And I think our student health and our athletic trainers and our medical staff are doing a good job in managing that. But it is difficult. I mean, it would be hard for me to remember who I've been in front of the last 2 days. And so it adds it adds another element that we have to be mindful of. And as a reminder, if I test positive today, I'm out for 10 days. But if I have a close contact, that individual's out for 14 days and is not able to test out. So the individual that was in close contact with me, they're out for 14 days and they could be negative the entire time. And so every school is dealing with this. It clearly, positives are certainly important, but contact tracing is important as well, because depending on the individual and who they're in front of, it can wipe out a lot of people.
Jon, with the American making the adjustment to their schedule day, was that sort of coincidental with this Marshall announcement, or was that as much as a result of it as anything in other games as far as dates being changed for ECU with UCF and Cincinnati?
Yeah, purely coincidental. We have been talking about that for a while. I think when the pandemic hit and schedules were all being adjusted from an inventory standpoint, we had talked about that for a couple weeks to get on more traditional times with the inventory number shrinking.
A note on fans. What's just kind of now, do you have a decent pulse on fans or kind of what they're thinking? They do want to go to games or don't want to go? Have you gotten any feedback on where they kind of stand in general at this point?
Yeah, actually, it's been really positive about wanting to attend the games. We really have had very little refunds. We've had some, but we've not had large numbers at this point. And, I do want to make clear we had to do this from a health and safety standpoint to move this back. But our anticipation is that we are going to play football. And the Central Florida game will be right now at this date and time, the next game up. It will give our team enough time to get back on the field, training, condition. I'll let Coach Houston at the appropriate time talk about that. But not only, I think today is day number 8 that we've not had a practice or conditioning. And so, that's a factor as well, plus the time that all these individuals will be returning to play.
What's the status among the other athletic programs? I know pushed back to spring with the exception of cross country. So I guess what is the update as far as the cross country season, and are any of the athletic teams practicing right now, or are they on pause as well?
Well, we have our teams practicing our fall sports. So right now, soccer and volleyball, they are all moving to their championship season in the spring. I anticipate a modified schedule there. Cross country, we've not made a determination on that because the NC2A has not made a determination. I anticipate that moving to the spring. That decision's not been final, but we continue to practice and work out in those other sports. It certainly is going to complicate the spring from a logistical standpoint, operational standpoint. There will be, I've talked for probably months about what the inconveniences are going to look like this year, and that we're all going to have to deal with those. There are going to be a lot of inconveniences and nuances in the spring that everyone's going to have to deal with if we, proceed with every sport like that in the spring.
John, a lot of conferences have opted to go multiple times testing once game week comes. Is that something the Americans officially decided to do as well?
Yes, good question. And right now what we're doing is once you started your season and starting official practice in the 20-hour work week is 1 day a week of everyone in the footprint. So it's coaches, student athletes, and staff. So that is managers, trainers, video personnel, student managers, etc. Once we get into game week, it'll be twice a week is what the American Athletic is talking about. So we continue to work through what that is. Again, our medical staff's been really good in that regard. We are extremely fortunate here at East Carolina in that we've got Vidant and Brody here, where we've been testing and getting the results back in a very quick manner, 24 hours or less. And I would say not every institution is like that. There's some really, big schools that don't have the testing capacity that we have. They're shipping it elsewhere. So that is a huge benefit to us.
John, with students now moving off campus, do you feel more confident that the season will be able to happen now that you can almost have a bubble-like situation where the players will most likely only be interacting with each other?
Well, I don't, number one, I don't think they'll just be interacting with each other. Not everyone is going to move out of the dorm. Now, I know that there'll be a lot of people moving out of the residence hall, but I still anticipate there to be a student athlete population in the residence hall. I think, Nolan, one of the things that you look at, obviously with people leaving, there's less people that our players will come in contact with, but we're not in a bubble. And I think you're going to see college football more resemble Major League Baseball, but because we're not in a bubble, and we can limit our contacts, we can, social distance and do all those things, but we're still going to have this to some degree.
Speaking of students and attendance, are the students still involved in your attendance plans, or is it mainly season ticket holders and that's kind of it?
No, students are still involved in our attendance plan. And what we've done is we've tried to wait until the last possible minute to decide what our capacity will be based on, state and local health protocols. And so absolutely our students are very much a part of our plan once we determine what that plan is.
Are there any further questions for Jon? Okay, Jon, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right, and I'm going to turn it over to Coach Houston. And Coach, if you want to say something, then we'll turn to questions after that. Okay.
Okay. Obviously a tough decision. I was able to get all the players that are not in quarantine and isolation right now together in Minji's this afternoon, them in person. A lot of disappointment. They've been very resilient throughout. It's tough. They've invested so much. They've been so excited about having a date. I think that they, there's where the next struggle is going to be is, finding that next motivation from that next date. But at the end of the day, Jon and I have been in constant conversation, and, our medical advisors have been talking to us constantly. It's just, it was going to end up not being a situation where our student athletes were safe. And just the numbers right now are not to where we can, we can resume yet. So disappointed, but at the same time, still very motivated. And our group, they're working hard. So, they're ready to get back out on the field.
Okay, we'll open it up to questions for Coach Houston.
Coach, is this kind of like spring practice 1, 2, and 3? I mean, you stop, you get going again, you stop. I mean, obviously it's frustrating, but what do you do?
Well, it is, and the thing that was motivating them for this first part of the fall camp was getting ready to play. I do think the competition and being able to be out on the field playing again was something that kept a lot of energy and excitement out there. This pause has set us back. There's no doubt. We've got to a degree kind of start from scratch whenever we do start back, because you're just then starting to get a little bit of conditioning, and then to have this pause, now you've lost that. So it's not like you can start back where you left off. You got to start back where the players are conditioning wise, and build back up from there. So the thing that's motivating them is still having a season this fall. Representing East Carolina University, playing in Daddy Ficklin Stadium, and competing in the American Athletic Conference.
I know it's not ultimately your decision, Coach, but obviously you have a say in it, I'm sure. When would you like to start the season? Would you like to play the 19th or hold off until that UCF game? I mean, what are your thoughts on an actual first game?
Well, I mean, obviously we want to play sooner rather than later. Number one, we've got to make sure that our kids are safe, and that we get this situation we have right now with the positives, that we get it under control as much as possible, and try to get the environment back to where we had it a few weeks ago. I think we can be ready to play on the 19th if we can get things under control pretty quickly. But that's a lot of those things still remain to be seen.
Coach, how much do you worry about the mental health of the guys? Obviously, like you kind of said, getting geared up, getting geared down, that sort of stuff in quarantine, when a lot of it's out of their control.
Right. A lot. It's hard as a 48-year-old grown man, you're talking about 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-olds. So, it's hard for them to understand a lot of things. And it's that's why thought it was so important that I was able to, speak to them in person today. I stressed to our coaches this morning, just, right now they need us on a variety of levels, outside of football. And so I think that, the coaching job right now is not as much about X's and O's as just ensuring that our players are in a good spot mentally.
What has your communication been like with those in isolation, and do they seem to be holding up well?
We've got a large number right now. Each of them were on the Zoom meeting with our team today. Individually, I message back and forth with them. They message with me throughout. I've had one that just texted me just a second ago. So we're in constant contact with them daily, from position coaches to support staff. So we try to keep a steady flow going just to make sure that they're doing okay.
Coach, I don't know if you can answer this. It might be something that John needs to answer, but are the majority of the positives asymptomatic? Or are there any that are a little more sick, let's say, than others?
I think there's a mixture. There's a lot that are asymptomatic. Right now, we have very mild symptoms with the ones that do have symptoms.
Does that add to the frustration, Coach, that you've got some that don't have any symptoms and some that have minor symptoms and you're shutting everything down?
Yeah, and you got, the ones in quarantine, a lot of them have no symptoms and have tested negative. But it is frustrating, and but it's the reality of the situation that we're in. And as we said back during the summer, situations like this, this is what's going to cause games to be postponed or canceled throughout the year. We're dealing with it right now. I think we're probably a couple of weeks ahead of most of the institutions in the country as far as we brought our students back early. I think you're going to see a lot more of this coming in the next few weeks.
Hey, Coach, I want to just briefly kind of take this in a completely different direction. I know this was the big news today for you guys and very disappointing, but pardon me. I was wondering if, when you met with your students today, we've been aware of some of the social justice issues that have been going on, dominating the news cycle this week. With all this going on with you and Marshall and the postponement, did you have a chance to talk to them about that and perhaps anything they'd like to do either the next few weeks or even as the season starts?
Yes, we did discuss that today, and this has been an ongoing discussion all summer. It's something that we've had significant dialogue with our leadership council about. We have a couple of initiatives that we are working on right now, in addition to the things that we did with voter registration and the video that the team put out this summer. It's a topic that's very important to me. I am very sensitive to the issue. Obviously, being, I was a prep athlete. I was a college athlete. I've been a prep and college coach for many, many years. So I am accustomed to being in an environment that's very diverse. I have close friends that have skin tone that's different than mine, and I have strong feelings about equality. So this is something that's very important to us as coaching staff, and also something that's very important to our student athletes.
Coach, this is obviously a fluid situation with the pause you guys are in. Is the hope maybe to get back on the field by sometime next week, or is it just a day-by-day thing in that regard?
I think it's day by day, but at the same time, we do hope to return sooner rather than later. I think that just having the ability to begin some conditioning and weight training, socially distanced, over the next couple of days is a good first step. With those that aren't in quarantine, to get them back active. So that's a good first step. So hopefully at some point next week we can get back out on the field to start practicing again. But even when we do, we're going to have to take it back from where we were when we got paused.
From the coaching and kind of game plan side of it, I know coaches are so kind of regimented, and you focus on this team and then this team and then the next team. You were basically getting into that with Marshall, and now Marshall's wiped out, at least temporarily, and you might not know if, how have y'all handled that from the coaching side, just the fluidity of planning for opponents at this point?
It's very much the same as the players. We feel very locked into our Marshall game plan. Feel very good about it. We spent well over the past week diving deep into it. So we feel like we're in a good place with that. Whenever that game does get rescheduled, then we have a good starting point for those preparations. We are already today beginning preparation for UCF if that is our next game, and began watching film of them about midday today. We did a summer study, so we already have a rough game plan for them. But that's what we got to do as coaches: get ready for what's next.
Are there any other questions for Coach Houston?
Yeah, Coach. How are you? What are y'all telling to the players to make sure that they're keeping to themselves and maybe trying to keep a bubble for themselves? What are y'all doing, or what are y'all able to talk to them about?
Well, I mean, the protocols have been the same for quite some time now. It's just extremely important that they wear a mask anytime that they are outside of the room. They've got to maintain social distancing, washing their hands regularly throughout the day, multiple times, avoiding large gatherings, and just they've got to be diligent of not putting themselves or their teammates at risk. And this situation, I talked to them about it today. You look just over a week ago, we had one active positive case in our program, and that was from an outside contact, and that had been going on for multiple weeks. And then today we are where we are. It's a painful reminder of just how serious this is and just how diligent they have to be. And it's not something that's negotiable. It's not something that they can, well, I'll do it if I want to. It's not that. You have to do these things if you want to protect your teammates, protect yourself, and if you want to play this fall.